Hello, and welcome back to Post Apoc Horse Talk. I'm your host, Gantages. This is my co-host, BG. Say hello, BG.
Hi there.
So, normal shtick at the beginning of a stream. Before we go on tonight, to avoid cluttering and all that stuff later, if you want to ask any questions for the Q&A at the end, please direct it towards BG. He'll compile them for later. So tonight, we have another writer from the fandom. The writer specifically from FOE Memories, the brain spawner of Frosty Winds. I'd like to welcome to the show Frosty Winds.
Hello!
Oh God! My ears!
Was that too loud?
Yes.
Sorry.
All right.
But hello there.
Yes.
Pega just bolted in here.
Yes, and welcome to the show, the bleeder of ears.
It's nice to be here finally.
So, I hope you make yourself comfortable now, but let's get right into it, the meat and potatoes of it all. So, from your film fiction, I saw that you had an awful lot of FOE content. But perhaps you could tell us, did you have any kind of writing experience before you started FOE stuff?
Surprisingly enough, I have literally no writing experience from before I started writing Memories. I did a lot of DMing in the past, and I did a lot of pen and paper narratives in school, and that's kind of I guess that's kind of as much experience as I needed in order to make something that was interesting to play, and in this case, as interesting as possible to read.
I'll be sure to bring that up later. You have opened yourself up for more conversation on this topic.
That's okay. That's why we're here.
So, moving on to our next question, as brief as that was. I've been told on good authority that your story tends to be a bit more wacky. To quote here, I want to put is you write with wild wasteland, enabled. Is there any particular reason as to why you write that way?
It's partly because starting out, especially joining the fandom, joining the reading the initial story, then making that jump into Project Horizons, then Murky Number 7, realized that a lot of the stories took place in, it was very dark and gritty, and it's so serious, and stuff like that was just it's overbearing, and to a certain extent, it's just not super interesting when you walk around the corner and it's just dark and edgier than the last one. So I decided that, and being the community as it was difficult to find anything that was interesting to read, sort of didn't take itself too seriously. So I was like, screw it all. I'm gonna go make my own Project Horizons with fewer blackjack and fewer hookers, and we're just gonna make it completely wacky nonsense.
Yeah, and that's kind of... Would you say that's something that the fandom might have forgotten in its early days? The tongue-in-cheek aspect of Fallout, the humor.
Yeah, it really seems like at some stage somebody decided, we're not naming names here, but somebody decided that the way we needed to go was we needed to go darker and darker and darker and edgier.
Yes, I believe that person's name is also a pseudonym for kind of a grim story.
Yeah, but we won't talk about that here, of course, in good taste. But yeah, people seem to have, or I guess writers, I guess we could say, just forgot that the whole point of the franchise is just to have fun, all that good stuff, even in the grim darkness of the, whatever year it ends up being. We want to still have some fun. We want to enjoy the content instead of just it's so dark and edgy, you won't believe it. And, etc. Right?
Well, I always understood that Fallout as a concept has this kind of a pitch black humor to it. It
Oh,
kind of,
absolutely.
sorry, I was trying to talk over you.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just agreeing with you. Continue.
So I do see that, yeah, obviously we have to freely admit here that FOE as a baseline is much more lighthearted than Fallout is as a baseline.
It's technically yes and no. If you actually take the time to read all the bullshit like in between the lines, like in the game, there's actually a lot of just wacky nonsense that happens. But it's true. It's not as frequent as you would expect it to be, especially like comparing it to what Memories, what I've written. Like when you're playing the main game of most Fallout games, it takes itself very seriously. I gotta get the water chip. I gotta go find my dad. And then you get New Vegas, where the plot line is literally just who shot me in the face.
I mean, to be fair, at least that one definitely got its tone more right than Bethesda Fallouts.
True.
Like, there was plenty of dark stuff in New Vegas, like naming names. Vault 11 is a good example.
Vault 11 is good.
Vault 11 is, my god, is that grim. And it's even worse for knowing that the suffering was entirely avoidable.
I mean, that's the humor aspect of that. You idiots! You got it all wrong.
Exactly. Like, there's a lot of dark humor in I think that New Vegas does it pretty well, where you have a lot of situations where it's like not overtly very funny until you like stop and think about it and just try not to imagine the human suffering attached to it.
Just a little bit.
A little bit. Like the Gary Vault. Gary's always good.
I mean, that's some existential horror right there.
We don't talk about the existential horror. We just talk about Gary.
Gary!
Gary!
That vault is like terrifying the first time you run into it, though. Like, for real. You're just wandering around having a good time, and you just hear Gary. And just kind of in the distance, you go, wait a second. I'm not Gary.
Well, even if you named your character Gary, who would be calling your name down here?
Exactly. It's good. It's terrifying. But like you stop and you read the terminals and all that good stuff, and then it's just like a bunch of nonsense. I don't remember a single word of how that story goes, but it's like I just vaguely remember it being like complete nonsense. I'm just like, yep, this is what we signed up for.
All right. Well, let's move on to our next question. We are kind of going through them a lot faster than I had hoped.
I can ramble on. I can ramble on more if we really want to.
If we got, I think we'll probably have time. We can talk about other stuff that isn't on the written agenda in front of me.
Sure.
So let's move on to your magnum opus, as I've written it here. FOE Memories. It currently stands unfinished. Do you intend to finish it at some point, or perhaps some of the other fics in your repertoire that sit unfinished?
A little note here that it's a rewrite that you're seeing there. The original was finished.
No, the original actually wasn't finished either.
Really?
We actually,
Oh.
yeah, we actually, well, okay, it like the original version like terminated at a point where it kind of sort of like ended on a cliffhanger, only because like at that stage, me and my editor, Unknown Light, we got together and we were like, okay, this is fucking nonsense. We have to fix this. So
you
we
can
took
talk more
everything.
about that in another question, but
Oh, okay.
Finish your point, but we'll talk more about that in another question.
Okay. But to answer in the initial question, though, Unfortunately, I think that's not going to be finished. It's been quite a while since I wrote anything of it, and that's probably going to be something that I'll have to talk about later. But it's been too long since I last wrote it, for starters, and honestly, I kind of don't really know what I'm doing with the story anymore. Um, as it stands, I started writing Memories like just kind of because I wanted to. But not knowing what the heck I was doing at the time, I also didn't like have a plan. There actually, surprise, surprise, wasn't actually a plot. Um,
I mean,
and
you did write it, and like, didn't you set it up originally that the character hadn't had any memory? So the plot is there, just the character and the reader probably just doesn't know what it is.
correct, but me as the writer also had no idea what it is
Perfect,
or what it
excellent
was at
writing,
the time.
100%, 10
Yes,
out of 10.
we call it like a triple blind trial where nobody has any idea what is happening. Um, but yeah, though. But honestly, like, the story's just kind of a mess because, well, after the rewrite anyway, it got better, but like, I still didn't really have a direction for the story. Like, I was literally making it up as I went along for the most part, and I kind of like, now at this point, I kind of know where I want to take it, but it's kind of too late now, to be honest.
I mean, it's never too late, but if I can sum up what you say, you have the inclination to want to finish it, but you are somewhat unsure about quite getting yourself put pen to paper, as it were.
Yeah, we can that kind of makes sense. Basically, it's it's difficult for it's difficult to kind of essentially salvage it at this point because well, I do have a plan specifically. We put together a plan before all this happened, but um yeah, I probably could, to be perfectly honest. I probably could try to finish it, but I now just lack the time and unfortunately motivation to finish it.
Uh, the Wandering Zeeb says, so you wrote Memories Calvin Ball style. I believe that is the what's
Oh
it?
my god, yes. Yeah, I Calvin Belled the shit out of it. Like, because the one good thing I had going for me, and I call this, complete genius and definitely not something I didn't come up with, was since the story didn't take itself too seriously and due to certain I guess certain plot motivations, like, I could literally just do whatever the heck I wanted. And by extension as well, like, it didn't really matter to a certain degree. I didn't have something that was going on, or I didn't have essentially a plan for it, just because we could just kind of do whatever we wanted, just because Frosty's there just to kind of wander around, have a good time, murder some people, etc. And more or less it would come together to a certain degree, while eventually advancing the plot.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to our next question then. I understand that probably most people here have not read Memories, myself technically included, because I
How
only.
dare you not prepare for this interview without reading all of it?
Hang on a minute, I got you on a fucking what
How
was
dare
Saturday
you?
night. Saturday night is when we finally agreed this. I did not have time. I work for a living, unfortunately, Mr. High Horse.
It's okay. I work for a living too. It's great.
Well, yes, the Pega is a very high horse until it finally lands.
Yes. This is what we call it.
So, could you please
Yeah, sorry,
be so kind as to give a brief synopsis that is as spoiler-free as you are able to go?
Yeah. Memories is a story about. Well, okay, think of it this way, really. Memories is literally just the first time you pick up a Fallout game and you go, You know, this is you get that stupid cutscene at the beginning where Doc Mitchell is like, "Hey, you know, what's your face look like?" And you know, we kind of blow through that bit at the initial beginning of the story, and then we just kind of move into just, ooh, that's a side quest. Ooh, that's a side quest. Ooh, it's a side quest. And so, you know, and it's mostly about just exploring the wasteland and just generally having a good time. I've written the story intentionally in a way where it doesn't take itself too seriously. So there's always something funny hanging around the corner at some stage, and you're always going to have, like, you know, in either new characters or something interesting to look at, something interesting to think about. If you know that stupid meme of the guy with the Russian helmet, the guy is like, I don't know who I am. I don't
I
know
know
what
that
I
one.
am here to do, but I just know I must kill. That is basically a very good summary of this story.
Yeah, I know that meme well enough, and that's essentially what you have here in your story. You just have the ultimate blank canvas.
Yeah. And especially since, like, again, the initial motivation anyway was not driven by any sort of plot. It was literally being taken where I wanted it to, and like to a certain extent as well during the early bits of writing. Like the community also had a say in what they wanted to where they wanted to take it, which was fun for me, but not necessarily good for the story itself, unfortunately. But yeah, it's, you know, it's fun, it's interesting, and it's not designed to take itself too seriously, so you don't have to like trudge through the muck of just, oh, I'm so dark and edgy, and you know, it's just we're here to have fun and, you know, cause a little bit of misery, but just for like plot related, you know, motivation.
And then there's also a slight spin-off you wrote in which it's the same story, but this time Frosty is a speedrunner.
Oh God, wait, I posted that?
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
You must have. Like, how did BG know about it?
I don't believe you. Hang on, I'm gonna check my story list right now. Did I? Is it in this one?
BG, why have you muted yourself? Why are you not answering questions? Why are you wilting under my gaze?
I'm so confused. Hang on, I must have
Riverbed
written it in one
Ransom
of...
needs to run off now.
Did I? No, it's not in the... I don't think I wrote it in the sort of, I don't think I put it in the side adventures, did I? No. Hang on, I don't think I posted this.
Oh, you fiend, you should have.
I never finished writing it, though. That's why. Okay, so it's not in here. It's not something I've published. I definitely wrote it at some point, and I definitely did show people. But basically, it was a short side story. It's actually extremely short. Like, I don't think it got past the initial like draft phase. I can pull it up out here though. But basically what it was is Memories was so like off the walls nonsense that at the time, probably during the rewrite, while I was kind of burnt out on trying to figure out what the heck I was doing for a few of the chapters, I just wrote this thing just kind of, you know, out of just because I found it extremely funny. Yeah, it's, oh yeah, here it is. I found it in my Google Docs. Um Yeah, it literally didn't make it past the initial like draft phase. This was 3 years ago apparently. Let's see. Okay, so this was, yeah, so this was right around when I was right around when the editing was, or the re-edit was basically almost done. Anyway, basically what it was is a cut down version of Memories, where it was literally just Memories is already basically a video game. Like, it takes itself so unseriously, and the, you know, the plot and especially the characters just get away with things that you would expect in a video game. So I decided, let's make it a video game. So we are just going to go ahead and essentially ping yourself off into space, really, is how it works. Hit all the flags and checkpoints and all that good stuff. And then, and then that's where the draft ends. I can link it into the Discord. Copy. Okay, I'll link it in here later. But yeah, otherwise, let's see, what else do I have in here? I know that some of these, well, okay, we already know that these aren't getting finished, but technically one of these is finished. Okay, so Natural 20 is not getting, definitely not getting finished. I would have liked to finish it, but basically we couldn't get all of our writers together all at one place because coordinating more than 3 people at a time is literally the worst, and especially with all of us like slacking off on our own stories already, like it was basically impossible for us to get anything written. But the first 2 chapters are hilariously fun to write, at least. I do recommend, grabbing a few of your friends, just literally sit in a document and just like write stuff. It's great. The AU adventures are literally just there as just, interesting writing snippets that I would crank out at the time just to like sort of, I don't know, like a palate cleanser, I guess you could call it. It was literally just if I wanted to write something that wasn't memories at the time, it went into there just for nonsense reasons. The only one that's actually finished is the H for Heresy one, because I was invited to do a letters thing that the group was doing. So that's its own standalone story. It goes with 26 other stories. I didn't just forget how many letters are in the alphabet. And it's there, well, as a standalone story to Memories. There's a bunch of other good stories in there, but they just told me that I could post it on my profile as well, just for posterity, essentially. Yeah, the Don't Starve one's never getting finished. I really hadn't. Well, actually, I did have a plan for it, and then I just never got around to writing it ever again, to be perfectly honest. And we already kind of know about this. That's not happening. It's unfortunately not happening. God, I'd really like to actually finish it, but like I've got too much stuff going on in my life right now. It's just unfortunately not convenient to sit down and write stuff. But hey,
I understand that feeling.
Yeah.
All
God,
right.
I promised myself I would get so much done while the world was ending, and I just didn't. And I'm just disappointed in myself for that.
Well, ain't that just the shit?
It really is. It really
Ain't that just familiar to?
I got some things done, but they weren't the things I said I would get done. And that's, that's just how it is.
Oh, that's because it moved to the wrong screen. That's why that happened, Zeeb.
Oh.
I'm so sorry, but sometimes that happens. But anyway, let's move on to our next question. So let's move on to something more specific.
I think it went back to black. You got it. There we go. It's back.
Yeah, let's move to a more specific question about the fic. So perhaps you could start off with telling us what inspired you to write it. You could probably say about all of your fics if you really wanted to.
Let's see. Okay, so start to finish, we've already covered kind of the initial motivation, where it's literally just
you wanted to. You felt the desire. You wanted to do.
Yeah. With the story itself specifically, like it's very reflective of the first time I played New Vegas and Fallout 3, where it was literally just, okay, I understand you want me to go do something, but there's a piece of candy over there. And by the time I finished collecting all the pieces of candy, like I was already superbly overly leveled for the the base game content, and like it was like, oh, you have to find your father. It's like, okay, I know I have to find him, but I'm going over there. And he just kind of patiently waits there. And that's, that's partly how the pacing in Memories works, where, Frosty just ends up doing something else, which is just, not the original goal. And this extends into how the rest of the story works, where time actually moves. Time moves on, even if Frosty's not doing something plot specific. And that's one of the biggest things that I found like bothered me about the Fallout games, but also partly because times, even if you don't decide to save that town, if you don't decide to go save the guy, get the thing, kill the dude, and things will happen. But that's beside the point. Otherwise, like, again, the fandom at the point where I wrote this, the fandom was like inundated with a lot of like Fallout Equestria, which was very dark and gritty. Oh, it's so edgy, and it felt like it felt like what we needed was something just like didn't take itself too seriously. So that was like the primary motivation at the time, which was just people wanna read, have some fun. Maybe they don't want to always read something that's dark, angry, and depressing.
I mean, Pink Eyes exists for that reason, though it ends up being kind of very dark at the end.
It gets a lot more dark at the end. Yeah, that's partly due to plot and motivation. I'm not super happy about it, but it like writing wise, it came out great. But like, in terms of like the tone of the story, yeah, you may get whiplash at that stage, and
I
it's not
I only
transitioned
just
very
recently
well.
finished Pink Eyes, and I genuinely, the way I saw that how the story couldn't end any other way than the way it did. There was no ending that wasn't this one.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like some of the stuff, it falls. I guess you could say it falls in the same type of trend where there's just this is just how it is, right? To a certain degree, like a lot of these stories, like especially with the genre that we live in, like this is just how it is. At some point, there has to be a point where we become dark and edgy, and that's it just comes with the territory, I guess you could say.
Hmm. Well, let's move on to the next question then. Perhaps you could also tell us about what inspired your character specifically. Why did you come up with Frosty the way she was?
Like as a character archetype, or just like literally the design?
Not the design. Like the design, is neither here nor there. I'm
Oh, okay.
talking more about the person behind the image.
Oh, well, literally,
Like I know you
eh.
said that she was started off as a blank canvas, but clearly she has certainly
Mhm,
more of a story there. Like you intend,
mhm,
like she was looking for her memories to find out what the fuck happened, right?
mhm. Oh, okay. I see. I see. Okay. Um. Well, to be honest, the literally the whole or most of the driving force behind the story, especially in terms of like the initial like concept anyway, actually comes from Bastion of all places. Not the shitty Overwatch character, that really good game in like 2013 or
I
something.
assumed as much.
Okay, just putting it out there for all the hip cool
Like,
kids who don't play good games.
to be fair,
Um,
like if people are aware of the age of your story, that Bastion could not have been that the character of Bastion couldn't have been your inspiration.
we can never truly know for sure. Um, But yeah, there's a line in there that was, I don't know, it really resonated with me at the time, if I recall correctly. Shoot. What was okay, yeah. It's the line where near the end of the game when the city's falling apart anyway, or about to explode or whatever. I think Rust is his name, or Rush, or the old guy, the Morgan Freeman sounding dude.
Mm-hmm.
There's a line in there where he specifically says, "Memories aren't important. Remembering, that's what matters." At the time, I had like absolutely no fucking idea what it meant, but like, God, it sounded really good. And that's essentially how Frosty develops. Like, you know, we learn. Well, okay, never mind. We can't talk about that part yet. Or rather, we shouldn't talk about that. How do we phrase it? It's just, to a certain degree, it becomes that you could say it's about knowing who you are and being truthful to that, and not necessarily trying to like stay on track of like who you were before, I guess, if that makes any sense without like spoiling part of the plot.
I mean, that is a suggestion. What's more important, the person you currently are or the person that you were?
Yeah,
Like, there are characters from fiction that lose their memories and become an entirely different and arguably better person because of it.
exactly. But yeah, otherwise, like at the time, like as well, there's a bunch of garbage, like, that I was writing into the story just because, like, it was just how I was operating at the time, which was not superbly well. Like, mentally, I was not in a good place at the time. I've gotten over it now, and looking back on it, like, it really shows. But, I was not in a good place at the time, and so, like, that kind of reflected on how the character of Frosty develops. And part of it is plot motivated, part of it is literally just I just wasn't I wasn't in a good place, and so I just ended up writing it in because I didn't really have anywhere it didn't have anywhere to go, really. And that's partly no, okay, I kind of don't feel I would rather not get into the specifics of that, but basically, like, it's just the way I wrote it was the way it made my brain feel happy, I guess, if that makes any sense, if that helps at all.
It made your
And
brain squeeze out the happy juice.
yeah, at the time I needed a lot of happy juice. God damn. But yeah, like, otherwise the rest of it just becomes a combination of just like the way that like people like me where play the Fallout games and play like other RPGs and stuff, where it's like, I really don't care. I have to go save the world. There's a guy, he's over here, he races birds. I need to go race this duck. And, it's partly that where, Frosty's very easily distracted, very easily motivated to just not pay attention. And then, as well as that, it's also partly like, I wanted to bring out how much the other bits of your brain kind of like interact with your life, because again, like, quickly circling back, I was not in a good place at the time, and a lot of my decisions, and by extension a lot of Frosty's decisions, ended up being like, very impulsive, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like, we kind of, or rather I guess, dialed that up to 11 or 12 and just decided that, just, what if part of your brain just goes like, let's go do that thing really quick, or let's not do that thing,
It's
because
it's
we
kind
all.
of like Frosty has something of a mind of a child, a little bit.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's also, yeah, that's also part of the thing as well. Like, what happens to somebody who's like extremely, 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 fucked up, but nobody really has the expertise to deal with that kind of thing, I guess you could say. But yeah, that's just kind of how it works. We just we just decided that it's a good spot for a character where you have a few different voices, where I can definitely get away with a lot more stuff as well. It's honestly partly just a writing shortcut where I can just decide that Frosty wants to go do a thing just because something said so, right? And it's just writing convenience, unfortunately.
I guess that's fair. All right. So now I get to bring this up again. Apparently, your story went through a rewrite, much like FOE Outlaw. How did the story change from before?
God, like, even knowing this question in advance, like, this was extremely difficult because I didn't really have that many notes left over because we'd already completed them and deleted them. If I recall correctly, though, chapters 18 and 28 were completely overhauled. Like, they they initially, I believe, were filler chapters, and a lot of the filler content as well got pared out at the time because the second time we went through it, Unknown Light pointed out a bunch of parts where it's like, this part exists for literally no reason. It's the beach episode, essentially, of the story, where, like, literally nothing happens in the story, and, nothing has changed. It's just a bunch of words on a page. So we paired out, like, God, almost like a third of the story, and just, like, rewrote all of that, added in more significant events. Frosty's and other personalities get fleshed out a little bit more in a few of the chapters, and we get to see more facets of those and her interacting with them as well. Specifically, the plot-driven ones, which we can't talk about here. We added in. I think we also made a few of her other interior characters more significant, or they just had a bigger role in the story, just because they were initially written for. Well, they were initially written just to put them in the story, and then, like, I guess in the initial first writing, I just never did anything with them, and so some of her like her own characters plus a few of the other side characters get a little bit more screen time as well, which is nice. So like everything comes together a little bit better. If I recall correctly, which I may not, I think during this rewrite I did add in at least one or two additional perspective shift chapters where we get to watch Frosty from somebody else's perspective, and I found those interesting to write. They were fun, and you really get to see, like, how much of a maniac this Pegasus really ends up being. Let's see what else. Oh, and then after the rewrite as well, we actually reinforced the plot line, so there's actually a driving force that Frosty's not paying attention to, as opposed to just not a driving force that's not written in the story. That's that's the important part, actually. We gave the story a plot. And that's really thanks to Unknown Light.
I did want to bring this up earlier, but my mind just forgot it for the brief moment. There's actually a really good instance of where your actions or choosing not to take part in stuff will actually make things happen. And that's Fallout 2. That did that really well.
I thought that was Fallout 1.
No, like nothing. The problem with that one is that there is a time limit, and things happen if you don't complete the game in the very short time limit, which is kind of jank.
Like in Fallout, I thought it was Fallout 1, where if you don't go to a certain location within the first 300 or within the first, like, 30 days or something, it just gets destroyed by the master, something like that.
Basically,
anyway, that's not the point.
I actually want to elaborate on this just briefly. It's a notable thing in Fallout 1 that unless you complete the game in a certain amount of time, communities get a bad ending because the
master goes and kills
kills them during the game and shit like that. And one of the worst ones was like 30 days. They ended up changing that and giving you a bit more time, but at the end of the day, they still pinned your chances of getting the best ending possible on very arbitrary time limits. Like time limits that there was pretty much no way you could get involved in that community in that time.
Speedrunners laugh in the distance.
Like even speedrunners still had trouble doing this. Because
Really?
yeah, like basically you can complete the game in less than 30 days to get the best possible ending, but it's really hard because basically you can't make the game go that much faster because you are physically traveling over a map and you can't just cheese the game.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I always forget that, people have legs and legs are not significantly fast.
And the game unfortunately does track that. You can't do like you do in like the 3D Fallout games where you can just, just give yourself an ass load of drugs and just go and noom up a hill. Or you can't basically break the game by just clipping out of it and being able to move around through more direct space and shit like that. You just have to go with how the time lets you do it. There are some ways you can do that, but you still need to push the game to the limit it lets you go to. You pretty much need to know the game front to back to do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, Fallout 2 did, I think, better personally. Like for example, Vault City. Like you can, if you don't actually get involved in them, the bishops basically force them to join the NCR out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let us move on.
Yeah, I don't think I ever played Fallout 2. One of my friends did, and I just kind of watched him do it.
I think you probably should play it. There is some jank in there, not gonna lie, and it did have an awful lot of like fourth wall breaks, an awful lot more than the first game. But I think the game actually stands up still.
Yeah. Plus, it's just kind of fun to play Fallout 2 with the Little Pip mod. And it's just so cute seeing this little unicorn goring humans to death with her cute little hooves and horn when you go unarmed or melee. It's just so enjoyable.
That's kind of amazing, actually.
Yes, that it is. Plus, I just enjoy that you can specifically target enemies' groins and get those flavor texts for them not being able to stand the pain anymore and falling over unconscious for a couple of turns.
Oh yeah, and the fact that you can basically, just castrate people on a whim.
Yes, and there's just something silly about people interacting normally with this weird gray unicorn in a stable jumpsuit walking around shooting people in the nuts.
Or you could basically shoot someone right in the fucking eye.
Yep.
Oh yeah, because that was a thing at the time.
Yep, that it was. So yeah, it is. I can recommend it. It's quite fun. But Fallout 2 also has its own little time limit. Like I definitely have felt driven to complete the game before the point where, for example, your dog disappears because the villagers had to eat it because they were starving. Stuff like that. Stuff that doesn't really impact the ending that much, but it just sucks, and motivates you to pick up the pace a bit.
Yeah, games don't do this anymore, and that does kind of bother me a little bit. Because, this very critical event is happening right now, over there. But we'll politely wait for you to finish whatever you're doing. It's okay.
On the other hand, well, let's look at Fallout 4, for example. You didn't really have any time limits on the main quest, but you had the fucking time limits. Sorry for my language. The freaking time limits on the settlement attacks. So that could easily sidetrack you from doing the main quest when suddenly one of your more important settlements is being attacked in the background, and you had oh damn it, I have to drop everything, run over there, run back to do the main quest stuff. It just feels like the priorities were a little off.
It's okay, though. They'll politely wait for you to fast travel there.
No, they won't. Yes. They will just take damage if you don't go.
Well, like, the enemies don't really go anywhere, and that's really what
matters. That's also a thing. If you take a while to get to the settlement, the enemies will spawn within the settlement instead of outside it, which is also annoying.
So, like, here's the thing here. The problem with the mechanics of the settlements here, when it comes to the defenses, is that if you are over a certain number, it doesn't matter. You don't get attacked. Now, I can see the argument that if you have super strong defenses, raiders and other things just won't attack because it's dangerous. And they don't think it'll be worth the time. But thing is that defenses defend against attacks, not prevent them entirely. And it didn't feel like they did that unless you were physically there.
Well, that's just, one of the many issues of Fallout 4.
Yeah, we can maybe talk about that at the end.
That's its own problem. Yeah, that's its own problem.
But let us move on to our next question.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard some things.
I hear things too.
Yes, I've heard some things about your story and the universe in which it resides. Apparently, you and your friends have kind of made like a mini continuity between all of your fics.
Yeah, we were the Marvel Cinematic Universe before we had a Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yeah. So the only stories that are actually like prominently visible in Memories are gonna be Outlaw and Frozen Skies. They're the only two that we managed like in continuity crossovers with. Technically adders as well. We wanted to plan something. I don't remember if we actually wrote anything about it, but we wanted to do something with adder, but it's just the time discrepancy. It was just literally it was too significant, and also based on distance, because his story takes place like somewhere completely different.
Out of courtesy to the audience, adder's fic would be which fic?
It's been a very long time. I honestly do not remember.
Wandering Zebra, yeah, Pegasi shared universe on merits of several characters from those fics having Enclave origins.
Yep. Yeah, that's everything is Enclave related. God, it has been.
I think it was the Last Sentinel, wasn't it?
Last Sentinel. There we go. Yeah, I found it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know that from Dark Shores you have that one Pegasus character, although that one crossed over with Outlaw, not with Memories.
Yeah, he's an outlaw. Yeah, we couldn't. A lot of it is just like I wanted to do something, but we didn't. But I did manage to do the parts with from Outlaw because
unlike Frosty, Mach didn't lose his memories, so there it's easier to show the ties from before Frosty was plunked down in the wastes.
Yep, exactly. And thank God we have like nice convenient flashbacks that we can also tap into as well.
Memory orbs! Don't we love them?
I don't think I actually made use of too many memory orbs. There were like a few that were plot specific, and I think that's really about it. It was mostly just like, we're gonna go ahead and just plonk this right here for convenience and just kind of let it happen. But yeah, so Outlaw takes place in the same continuity as Memories, and it's also very interesting in the way that the both story plots are actually somewhat related as well. The events in Outlaw are partly motivated. Well, hang on. Let me think about it really quick. No, the events and Memories are partially motivated by what happens in Outlaw, and the way, well, the entire, I guess, pre-Wasteland version of Frosty is mostly developed in the sort of Outlaw in the Outlaw universe that we don't see much of, actually, because there was only so much space, of course. We get to see one of the side characters from Frozen Skies show up in a a non-plot related segment, but it is a spoiler segment. But shows up near the end, where readers from Frozen Skies would go, "Hey, I know who that is," and followed by you get to see a side of that character you actually just didn't get to see in the story, just because it wasn't they weren't a main character, right? So you never get to hear like what they thought about it, blah blah blah. And so we got to explore that a little bit, which was nice. Relentless is a cool guy.
That he is. I'm going to have to reread both takes now just to catch that scene.
You still have to read mine. Because you didn't prepare for the interview.
What do you want me to do? I can't read a whole 30 bloody part in 3 days. Even if I had. If I couldn't, it wasn't working.
Not with that attitude.
I would have to spend every single hour between the moment that you had agreed to come on the show and now, and I probably would have had enough time to have read the whole thing.
Aha! I know how we solve this. We do a live reading stream of the fic.
Don't bloody tempt
I do
me.
voices. I do voices. We can do this whole thing. It's great.
Oh boy.
Don't tempt me.
Are you going to make me voice Riverbed?
Probably.
Oh no.
Oh yes.
Okay. Here's a thing for you. Once you eventually run out of guests, because there will be a point where there will be no more guests to bring on the show, because there just isn't enough people left in the fandom anymore. Maybe we'll fill up the show with live readings.
And that is the part where you have to worry about. Now you're going to have to get good. You're going to have to become voice actors. You're going to have to become Matt Mercer.
To be fair, we did do a little bit of voice acting previously. We had a fan fiction special. This was actually supposed to be a fan fiction special too, but I want to point out, audience, none of you decided to vote for something on the Discord. And on that point, for those of you who are here, we have a Discord now. Posting a link to it now. We will mask you during the upcoming intermission. But anyway, let us be moving on. This has kind of already been asked at this point, but you said you kind of don't really have anything to you didn't have anything planned in the writing front in the future.
Well, not for Memories specifically, only because that ship has sailed so far. I've lost sight of it, and it's a little bit more difficult for me to figure that part out. But the good news, well, kind of good news, is I am based on the mistakes and experience from Memories. I am currently planning on writing something else entirely. It's still kind of in its planning stages, but I've gotten a little bit of it written. I'm kind of happy of how it's come out so far. Basically, we have an Ishmael situation with the story where it is literally just I wanted to explore what happens in a universe, except somebody else is watching all of this happen, motivated by the actual main character, which is off doing some grand thing, and our visual main character is, just kind of doing her thing, kind of doing her job, trying to pay her taxes on time. I guess while we're already into it, and basically we have a sort of future-y sci-fi experience where, and I'm kind of annoyed the Outer Worlds kind of got there first, but they're a AAA developer, and I'm just some guy that works retail.
Actually,
But
they're not a AAA developer. They're kind of an indie developer.
Okay, whatever. They're a AA. They're a AA developer. That's not the point. Hang on. Hang on. You don't get to tell me how miserable I get to feel about it. But anyway, the initial concept anyway is similar to the Outer Worlds, I guess. No, Outer Wilds, Outer Worlds. Which one's the one that made the Fallout one?
Outer
The
Worlds, I
Fallout
believe.
one. Outer Worlds?
Yeah, Outer Worlds. The Outer Wilds is an
the indie
unrelated game.
developer.
No.
Okay, that's the
Outer
indie.
Worlds
That's not an
was
indie
still
developer?
made by they were made by Obsidian. Obsidian is not a AAA developer.
No, Outer Wilds.
No, Outer Worlds. Obsidian is not a AAA developer.
Right. No. Now I'm asking about Outer Wilds. That's the indie developer, right?
They're also an indie developer. They're both indie developers.
Okay, whatever. Anyway, that's not the point. Basically, it's very similar to what the Outer Worlds has, where man makes it to space. Man immediately corporatizes space because that's just how it works. So we have this sort of environment where we get to this sort of early 2020 sort of situation where mega corporations basically already own everything, and you can't tell me otherwise. We don't already live in a shitty dystopian society where we don't have flying cars yet. But yeah, so man makes it to space. There's an exoplanet X amount of light years away, and it's mineral rich and all that good stuff. We get to experience the frontier all over again. So we draw some future parallels to that. It's the environment itself, and by extension part of the sort of lore, is based on the good old game Firefall, which I fell in love with, and I'm sad that it was destroyed by Chinese developers. But that's not anything we can do anything about unless you try to see if the crazy man behind it all finishes making his other game. But that's its entire other problem. But it's the story where you have these guys that come out to space, and there's a few different categories of people that can end up going there. Either you have people like our main, or our actual main character, and not like the implied main character, but our actual main character is just like a cube farmer. Like they clock in, get work done, and clock out. You have people that are like hunters, and people that are like experienced, and people like mercenaries and all that stuff that show up to the planet to kill the wildlife because it pays really good money to go to space and shoot giant space aliens that want to eat people's faces. And then we tap into some of the things that are we don't want to talk about, like stuff like, yep, we just send prisoners and stuff there just to feed them to the meat grinder just to get stuff done because they take up less space in Space Australia. But yeah, we follow our plucky little cube farmer, and she does her cube farmy things, and then we meet our actual like in-universe protagonist, and so our main character becomes the little annoying fairy on the radio. And so we get to experience exactly what happens behind the scenes while the hero is doing the hero thing, and etc. What the guy on the keyboard has to deal with, all the bullshit on as a repercussion of what happens. And it's something I've wanted to explore for a while because it's just like in Fallout, just like in a lot of other RPGs and stuff. It's like, yeah, you destroyed the thing, you've saved the day. So who's going to pay for my insurance?
Yeah. People don't really think about what happens after, society crumbles and shit like that.
Yeah, people want to take down the man, then realize the man was paying the bill. And it's entertaining to me. Is it a good concept? Who knows? We'll see.
We will see.
We'll see. One way to find out. But yeah, that's essentially the concept that I'm working with. It's just we're just there in order to make some money, pay the bills, get to work on time, all that good stuff, right? Yeah.
So, moving on to our next question. These are the more obligatory ones because we have to have obligatory questions. How did you get into MLP and then FOE by extension?
Oh, we've already basically covered this, haven't we?
Did we? I don't think we did.
Well, kind of. I accidentally ended up covering it. But yeah, basically at the time I was not in a mentally in a good place. So yeah, that's just how it goes. I wandered into the community because it was, God, I think at the time it was something weird. It was because it was like a huge novelty at the time, essentially, where it was like, hey, have you seen this show about small horses? I bet you'd like it. I'd be like, you know what? Sure, let's go and experience small horses. And yeah, it turns out that it came out pretty good. And I mean, I guess I'm on board.
Do you recall any specific thing that got you into it? Like, say, a YouTube video you stumbled on? Was it, one of your friends who had found something and linked it to you?
Oh no, I think it was literally just I must have been like on Reddit or something, and then it was like, hey guys, there's a show about small horses. Do you want to see small horses? And I was like, you know what? I'm angry. I'm depressed. I'm tired. I want to watch small horses. And
what's the worst that could happen? I feel worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that, it was a nice uplifting show at the time that got me through a lot of things. And I probably wouldn't be as as unfucked up as I am today if I hadn't had that show with me. But yeah, that's just that's the tall and short of it. That's more or less how it works. Otherwise, just getting into the community as a whole, it was literally kind of for the aforementioned reasons. Like I literally just played. I must have just played Fallout New Vegas at the time for, the second or third time, and by extension Fallout 3 as well. And then I remember this dumb story, Fallout Equestria, showing up on the front page of FimFic at the time, and I went, wow, that is such a dumb concept. I'm gonna read it.
Oh wait, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah. And let's be honest, that's kind of how everybody really gets into it. It's like, wow, this sounds really dumb. I'm gonna go read it.
I mean, I didn't think it was dumb. I thought it was...
Really?
Okay. Convince me. I don't think this is a dumb premise. Convince me.
Seduce me.
For me, it was the fan art, seeing some horses in biker outfit with guns and energy weapons. I was thinking, I'm normally not a fan of Post Apoc stuff. I'll just go check this out. And what'd you know? Fallout Equestria then got me into Fallout.
It was reversed.
So, I'm actually going to tell... This is going to be the first time ever I actually tell a story about myself.
Oh, man.
Which is a barefaced lie. I've told many stories about myself here.
Oh, man.
The reason why I got into FOE was because I overheard a conversation. So...
Okay.
I was actually meeting up with my local Brony meetup group in the city in which I live. I was not working that night. Yes, that will remain unnamed because I am absolutely not going to DDoS myself. So, I was meeting up with them because I had no work for that evening. And, sorry, I overheard the conversation of a couple of people talking about something called Fallout Equestria. Because I am a massive Nosy Parker and stick my nose in everyone else's business. Or at least I
Right,
did.
and that's why I'm here on the show.
Mm-hmm. I overheard them talking about it. I jumped into the conversation asking, what the fuck is that? And
As you do.
I got explained that it's a post-apocalyptic version of MLP, and they just went, go listen to it. And I did. And I liked it. It was good.
And now here we are on a podcast talking about it.
Yes. Here we are,
And having a good time.
Well, how long ago was this? It would have been...
Don't say years.
It would have been... I would have been 16 at the time, so that would have been... like 9 years ago now.
God. Oh, I'm so old. God. But, you know, it is what it is. And it's, you know, it got us here. And that's really what's important.
Yes, let's all feel all together, people. But anyway, let's talk about something that is both equally good and bad in our next question. Views on the Big Five fix: FOE, PH, Heroes, Pink Eyes, and Murky.
Oh God. Okay, so we're really gonna not talk about one of these. We're gonna not talk about one of these. But
Are we gonna break out the cudgel? Are we gonna get out the let's hobble Project Horizons again cudgel?
so we already kind of know how we stand on that. So we're just gonna kind of skip over that really quick.
Yes.
I never finished reading Heroes. I think I was waiting for it to update, and then I just forgot about it. Pink Eyes I read. It was amazing. It really fucked me up. Like solid 8 out of 10. Like very good. But it was not what I was looking for in my life at the time. So that was not super welcome. But
it basically rolled up a whole trainload of feels and said, "You're going to buy my feels now."
Yeah, basically. It was like, don't get me wrong, like it was really good, but like Jesus Christ, that was like not what it was like not necessarily like I knew where it was going. I just didn't want it to tell me where it was going, right? Where we knew the thing was going to happen, but like I just didn't want to be told that, like, straight up, that's just, yes, this is a thing that is happening.
Yeah, that's
And then the
certainly
thing
was one of the more touching ones, yes.
Yeah, and then the thing happens, and you're like, oh god damn it. And yeah, like that's just how that's how that story ends. Anyway,
I'm not going to
you wanna
say
say-
precisely what this is, but there was a bit in that I found kind of, why did this happen specifically? I don't know why the certain entity involved with Miss Puppy Smiles was even a thing in the whole thing. I don't think it needed to be there.
You mean
Part of
something
me
that
says-
was with mind stuff? That scene, you mean?
It seems a little bit like, well, actually, I guess it seems like pretty like, or in terms of writing, I suppose it sounds okay once you stand back and think about it, because like, we don't want to talk about, or as the story, I guess you could say, we don't really want to talk about that one thing that happens, but it's something that you have to cover at some point, and it's brought up pretty well, honestly. And because it's a very happy-go-lucky like story, but it's just, in the back of your mind, like, that this is, this thing happens, and it's not
The
something
wasteland
that
always gets its pound of flesh from everyone.
It's just how it is. But anyway, but yeah, Pink Eyes was really good. I really enjoyed it. I stopped reading Murky, God, I don't know, pretty early on in the story, just because like I just wasn't enjoying it, because this was like right after Project Horizons, and like at the time Project Horizons had stopped at around like chapter 40 something, and I was like, Jesus Christ, I can't keep reading this. I'm gonna read something else. I read Murky, read for a while. It's a really good story, but it was just not what I was looking for at the time because it was like very dark and edgy and depressing, and makes you feel and like this is not what I want to feel. I'm sorry. It's just like that didn't happen.
No, that's okay.
I did enjoy Heroes, and then I just forgot to keep reading it, so that's definitely my fault.
And this leaves us at the original Ballad Equestria. What about that?
God, it was like I really did enjoy it, but like looking back on it now, like you can really feel how much of an XP it is on just Fallout 3 in general. Where it was just, we took a few key events from Fallout 3 and then just went ahead and turned it into small horses.
I mean, I still think
everything's
they did it.
characterized very well.
They did. I think they did it better than Bethesda did it.
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, this is this is true. But at the same time, like if judging it as its own standalone story, like we, took a franchise, added small horses to it, profit. But it's good. It's really good for, especially for how well it's held up, right? You have a nice story about some small horses doing some very not small horse things. And it's like this sort of like really weird, dark, edgy version of something that you would not expect to involve small horses. And it's just like the funniest, coolest thing that you've seen, right? That's just generally why we're here.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to have the very similar kind of thing. That, like, it doesn't hold up as well as it did when we first read it. I pretty much most people will agree with that. But it's still good.
Exactly.
But
And then we just don't talk about the other one.
Yeah. Well, last thing before I think we'll close up for a short break. So, what do you think about the FW fandom in general? How healthy it is, and where do you think it's going?
God, okay, so that's basically the big elephant in the room, isn't it? Because as a community, God, we are a bunch of lazy people. Like, let's be real. The people that have written stories, me, everyone else, like, how many stories are actually finished in this franchise? Like, you have
That's
to
a
really think about it.
good question.
Yeah,
Whoops.
like I had probably pegged this percentage as at like maybe 15% of the stories are actually finished, and I'm not really. I guess if we did want to count like the one shots and stuff like that, probably a larger percentage at for sure. But like this sort of like long format version, like a lot of these are not finished, and that's just not good for the community. And like, it's just how it is. Right?
Yeah, I mean, just speaking from the book club perspective,
It's not
it's hard.
convenient.
Yeah, it's really hard to get people enthusiastic for actually reading the stories when you see like last chapter published 2015. Oh no.
Nervous laughter.
It's a good story, but it never got finished.
If it makes you feel any better, though, like at the very least, Memories does end on like a neat cliffhanger.
Yeah, I guess so.
It ends on a very like neat cliffhanger, so that's okay. We take those. We count those, right? We count those. But yeah, like as a community, like God, we gotta stop being lazy. We gotta like get shit done, dude. Like too many, like there's so many stories in this franchise, but like if you think about how many of them are completed, like the percentage is just so low that it's just not a good reflection of like what the overall franchise looks like, right?
Yeah, and I really gotta appreciate when authors, even after the show has ended, commit to finishing their stories, or those who manage to very quickly get theirs wrapped up before that little guillotine fell.
Exactly. But like overall, like it's a good like the community itself is very good. It's just like as like a story franchise, it's, it has room for improvement if anybody wants to eventually get on that, me included.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I also get that feeling every time I see, like, say somebody posts art of my OC and it's like, oh, which Fallout Equestria side fic is he from? Oh no, do I tell them?
oh no. Well,
Yeah.
But like overall, I think, God, like, is the audience like really still here for this kind of story though? Like, is this still a thing that the kids are into? Because this is now just like something. Now this is now a question that's very topical. Is this what the kids are into? Right. Because I started writing this story like, when I was like basically fresh out of college, or no, just like when I started college actually. And like now I am depressed and employed in a post-apocalyptic society.
I mean, this is where we are, regardless of how we feel about it. And
It would.
sorry, carry on. What were you saying?
I mean, it would be interesting to see if there are any actual metrics, but there are still enough people willing to meet up, read, and discuss the stories. There are still people drawing fan art of their own, of their own volition and energy. So there's still a spark. I'm not sure how it compares to the fandom in its heyday, but
Yeah.
we're here. We're talking about it right now. We have a
Yeah.
bit of an audience going on in the stream, so it's not completely dead.
Yeah, like it's still there for sure, but like it may not expand significantly in the as time goes on.
We'll probably need a revival of MLP in general to give new and fresh life to the FOE fandom.
We're getting one. Aren't we getting one soon?
Eventually.
We're getting another season. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and even then, you still have the occasional trickle of college students who occasionally still stumble into the Discord servers and that. But of course, it's nothing compared to the big flood that was in 2011, 2012. We'll just have to see what they do with their branding and what kind of impact that might have. Well, so sit tight, I guess.
Exactly. God, I really hope it's not disappointing.
Yeah, same.
We can only hope that things will get more lively as they go on. But with, unfortunately, that somewhat somber note, we're going to break for a short commercial break. Hope we enjoy let's go with Sunrise Sarsaparilla, I think.
Gee, Grandpa, what's that swell-looking stuff you're drinking?
Well, my boy, it's the cool, refreshing taste of Sunrise Sarsaparilla. Unlike Sparkle Cola, Sunrise always stays smooth and carbonated, and there's no risk of death by radiation poisoning.
Jeepers, that's keen!
You said it, Grass Stain.
Remember, kids, sip your Sunrise Sarsaparilla to keep you shining, sharp, and swell. It's the official drink of the Junior Steel Rangers.
Sunshine, you'll be mine, Sunrise Sarsaparilla.
Hello, and welcome back to Post Apoc Horse Talk. So, now we move on to our next section of the show, lore and discussion time. We may actually talk a bit more here about, you mentioned that you enjoyed pen and paper. Perhaps we'll include that here in this time.
Sure.
All right, let's start off with our first lore topic of the night. All right, so
find it.
Stealth bucks and stealth cloaks. How do they work?
Magic.
Well, duh, it's all magic. Like, the whole world is magic.
Well, it's all magic nonsense, but at the end of the day, it's just it's the stealth boy stand-in, right? It's kind of a Fallout staple at this point.
I mean, the stealth bug is definitely the stealth boy stand-in, and the stealth
No.
cloak is the Chinese stealth armor stand-in.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because
Yeah,
the whole Chinese stealth armor. Yeah, no, like the Chinese stealth armor and the stealth boy are like basically Fallout staples at this point. Like you can't have a game without it.
Yeah, but I'm wondering precisely what is it doing?
Clearly, it summons one of the goddess's alicorns. She rolls her eyes, gets some bottle caps from the container, and turns you invisible before she goes away.
Okay, that is
I mean,
one
sure.
theory. But I mean, in science, they're looking on ways to try and gain a practical invisibility. One of the things I saw is they're trying to make basically it's like a giant prism. In essence, it basically diverts the light around you. So you can't be seen if the light isn't hitting you. So it would make you probably just look like a black spot.
I guess so, yeah. Otherwise, it's literally just it's magic. It just decides that you're just not visible, and that's really that may actually be just as complicated as it gets.
Maybe, but if that's the case, if you're actually just invisible, how is it people are able to detect you? Like, you can bump into people while wearing these things. If it makes you, for all intents and purposes, actually intangible,
Oh, it makes you invisible, not intangible. It's not it doesn't make you like Danny Phantom. It just makes you not visible. So if you're still just gonna walk into somebody or leave your Pip-Boy light on,
I mean, it's
then
kind of implied that you become intangible.
Is it?
I mean, it's suggested that when people were looking at the stealth cloak, you become intangible.
I thought it's just because they like just for some reason can't notice you, and that was just kind of written into the whole Sneak 100 thing.
Maybe. I know for a fact that if you can detect magic by some sort of means, or detect the object in which the stealth it comes from, like the gemstone, then yeah, you can be detected that way. But it doesn't seem to make much sense on quite precisely what's it actually doing. Because it seems to change also. At least within the fic, I believe, like I mentioned, that at one point it suggests that they're intangible. In other times, not so.
It's who knows? Oh god, who knows? Maybe it's just like literally just something that's just there for just as an XP, and then it's maybe just not as complicated as we make it out to be.
Perhaps.
Right. It's just, hey, this is the whatchamacallit. This is the stealth armor. This is the Pip-Boy or the stealth boy, and then we're just gonna kind of go ahead and let that happen. And then it may also be like something that I do where I just literally forget what stuff does in my own story, and then just go ahead and just like continue on my day, and then somebody like Unknown Light, my editor, goes like, hey, hold on a second, that's not how it works. I'm like, I would know, I wrote it. He's like, no, because you wrote it, I don't trust you, go read it again. I'm like, okay.
Well, Zach brings up, or rather Zachnak brings up, could have something to do with perception filtering, because you do get significant stealth bonus that don't always follow being see-through.
Yeah, that's that's also a thing. Or no, that's kind of covered in the sort of Stealth 100 thing that I was thinking of. Where it's like it's just kind of sort of that's the sort of in-universe way of explaining it out, I think.
That also brings up where at least the Equestrians developed it from, because they got stealth bucks, I believe, independent of stealth cloaks. They did eventually get them and have a look at them, but
Wasn't
the stealth book
it
was
depends what's
developed
canon.
from Trixie's invisibility spell.
Doesn't it depend on what's canon though? Because doesn't maybe God, it's been a really long time since I read it. I thought it was something like it was like reverse engineered or something.
I'm pretty sure it was mentioned like in the original fic that it came from Trixie's invisibility spell, because they had been trying to backwards engineer the stealth cloak but couldn't quite get the invisibility part. That's why they brought Trixie on, because she had the invisibility.
I see. Maybe that's how it is. Yeah, it's been a really long time since I read any of it. I don't remember.
If the chat wants to comment on any of this, feel free. But otherwise, I think we can move on to our next point, because mostly it seems that we just agree that there's a lot of ambiguity there, and it can be pretty much up to interpretation precisely on how it works. All right, so next thing. Okay. The question here is, how strong are and should the Steel Rangers be? I've got a note here that suggests for both Loyalist and Applejack Rangers.
Well, it's not really ever like fleshed out further than just we have steel hooves and then we just go ahead and just let them tag along, right? So basically it just becomes a question of like how close to an XP are they to the Fallout 3 variety, where they just kind of do nothing, really. Or just kind of hang out and just kind of like harass people that, hey, you've got a battery on you, I'm gonna need that. And stuff like that, isn't it? So based on that sort of logic, wouldn't we just circle back to they just kind of hang out, stagnate, just like Veronica says in whatchamacallit, New Vegas?
I mean, sure, but they seem to be a pretty powerful faction, at least from the multiple instances of where they're suggested. Like, they have multiple bases around the main wasteland. They've got bases in pretty much every single side fic. So if you're taking all of that and kind of congesting it all together, like, it doesn't seem to give a very easy way of showing how strong they are or how weak they are.
True. But, well, again, maybe it does just literally circle back to just like, how close they are to the Fallout variety, because we actually don't really have much information on them like in canon, right? It's literally just their thing that exists. They're basically the same, but we don't really investigate that as Little Pip. It's just literally, let's go do the thing, isn't it?
I mean, like, it suggested that the Applejack's Rangers actively use their strength to help the wasteland. Now, you could argue quite how much strength they had, but they tend to be using it, and it tends to be at least enough to deal with wasteland threats.
True. God, otherwise, like, again, I don't really remember much of the original story. It's been like literally years since I read it.
Huh. Not as much as I thought they'll come out of this.
Yeah, unfortunately, I am not the target audience for this.
Well, here's one that seems to be coming up quite a lot recently. Is the original too grimdark?
In the grand scale of things, definitely no. Because it's the sort of thing where, like, it is definitely dark, but on average, since we have that one story that will not be named weighing down the average, I want to say maybe no.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is definitely more dark than average, though, especially that one part where we just decide that, cannibalism is okay, right?
Cannibalism.
Is that not what we call it?
I mean, I've heard those letters and sounds, but never quite in that
Yeah, we call it cannibalism. I'm pretty sure that's a scientific term for it.
Okay. Cannibalism it is.
Yes, and yeah, I guess the original story is actually pretty dark, but it's not as again in comparison to the average, it's not that dark. Just because the average is weighed down so much. We didn't like the average, so we lowered the average just in case.
Well, here's a better question, perhaps. Is it too grim dark, given its original source material and how noble bright it is? Is it too grim dark?
Mm. But people like that sort of thing, isn't it? That's why we're all here. We enjoy
just because people like it is not necessarily answering the question of whether it is too much of something. Now, you can love stuff that's in excess. That's objectively true.
True. That's why I have this bag of Sour Patch Kids on my desk.
So, given that position, do you still think it's not grimdark? Rather, it's about the right flavor of grimdark.
In terms of the original source material, I think it's fine. Fallout is actually pretty dark. It's not overtly there, but it's similar to the comedy in Fallout, where if you read all the stuff and you kind of examine the situation, you'll notice it's a pretty dark environment, and it gets significantly worse when especially when you read up on what Robco does in the in the base content, right? Stuff like that. So if we want to draw that parallel, I think it's fine. It makes sense in context and in universe, but I guess as a standalone content, maybe it is really dark. But that's also why Fallout as a general rule is already pretty dark, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, Fallout is very dark. It definitely doesn't pull its punches when it comes to just how sad it wants to make you feel. One second. So, overall, you think it's about right, even given the considerations then?
Yeah, considering considering the base content and then comparing it to the original side fic, I think it makes sense. It's a comparable amount of dark, which, well, again, makes sense. It's it's got the moments where it's definitely not okay, but if we compare it to what we have in Fallout 3, and especially well, not really as much in New Vegas, but as much as Fallout 3, again, it makes sense. There's a lot of shady shit that happens behind the scenes, like at Robco, for instance, which comes out the most frequently, since that's literally the plot point in Fallout New Vegas.
Okay.
A lot of other stuff in Fallout, by extension as well, isn't it?
So will be our next question then, given that. It seems to be inconsistent amongst the fics about what precisely do you need to do to punch through an Alicorn shield. Some fics pretty much make it invulnerable, others make it so that you could potentially damage what's on the inside and shoot that gooey Alicorn filling.
Oh yeah, I've solved it by literally we just use the world's largest gun available in the franchise and then just go to town. It's because it's not really like they don't really explain too much about the shields in the initial base fix, so like at that point, like everybody has just kind of gone off the rails and just decided this is kind of what it should be, right? And then we've just like never really gotten together as a community and said, okay, these are the rules, right?
No, no, we haven't, unfortunately.
Everybody's playing their own modded experience, and so some people feel that they are basically indestructible, and some people say that maybe they're not.
I mean, like it's been suggested, like I've heard suggestions that you could use a bypass spell to go through it, but and you could put a bypass spell on bullets, but to be fair, when it comes to something like that, that seems to be a bit too specific. Because if you're making like an armor-piercing bullet to punch through whatever's trying to, be in front of you, you'd have to know what you're shooting. And I don't believe if you're making weapons for fighting enemies that don't typically have shields, you wouldn't be able to make a bullet that's for punching through a magical shield.
It wouldn't be practical specifically as well. Like, yeah, no, it just wouldn't be practical. But again, like it just kind of depends how strong we've decided the shields to be. Like, I like for instance or the way I've interpreted it is literally just it is just the world's largest overshield. You just need to do enough damage to go through it.
Yeah,
right? Or rather to break the shield.
that tends to be where. Sorry, you carry on.
Yeah, whereas a lot of other stories where it's like, this is a wall for all intents and purposes. Good luck going through this wall. And, maybe that's it.
I tend to err on what you suggested, which was you just need to do enough damage to it to punch through.
Yeah, that's generally how shields. Well, okay, like quote unquote, like so sort of like as a very, very, very broad like stretch. Like that's generally how shields work in science fiction, right? Where it's literally it's not just a wall for the most part. It has a finite amount of health or a finite amount of like damage or what have you they can sustain before either the user can no longer hold up the shield or whether it just breaks because there's just too much force or whatever garbage we want to throw at this.
But
So it seems to make the most sense.
It's kind of suggested that Alicorns have near unlimited kind of, what would you even describe it? Magical endurance?
Like magic power? Yeah. I guess, but at the same time, like, it's not that it's not logical, but that's what sounds most intuitive, I guess, is what is like the way I kind of figured through it, right? It's just, it is a shield.
I mean, the way I've kind of thought around it, when you've got like Alicorns in front of you, sure, they have basically an unlimited kind of power pool to play with, but it's like trying to pour Niagara Falls through a drink funnel. Because you can't force all the liquid through.
Yeah, exactly. Like besides for balance reasons that, you can only use so much power all at once. We're not Dragon Ball Z here. You can't just can't just spend 3 episodes making a giant bomb. You can only do so much all at once. So yeah, no, your comparison makes sense. Yeah, like that's generally just I think how we've just decided, or how I've decided that it just works. Where maybe it needs to be stronger, but at the same time, like it can only like protect against so much damage, and if we use the world's largest bullet, then it doesn't matter.
All right. Well, that actually was all the things I wanted to bring up today as lower points. Since I believe we've exhausted all the things we wanted to discuss today, I believe this is a good point to. Since I don't see any questions, did you get any questions, BG, during the show?
He didn't make it
Questions? Nope.
Well, if there's no questions, then I suppose it's actually probably as good a place as any to end the night. So, this has been Post Apoc Horse Talk. I've been your host, Gantagious, and my co-host has been BG. And our guest tonight has been Frosty Winds. So until next time.
Or the Bobulator.
Or the Bobulator. So until next time, keep your eyes trained and your gun in its holster, because you never know what the wasteland brings. Have a good night, folks.
Goodbye.